Hello and welcome to NHP's live webinar on NCC compliance and the Smart eBOX. My name is Stephanie O'Donnell. I'm the Product Manager for Integrated Power and Energy for NHP Electrical Engineering. I'm responsible for our energy management and power quality range. If you have any questions throughout, please use the Q&A section on your webinar screen to submit, and we'll be happy to address those at the end of the webinar. Today we will cover the NCC and other energy efficiency codes and initiatives in place in Australia, how the NHP Smart eBOX empowers you to achieve compliance to these various schemes, and we'll also look at a few key case studies where the Smart eBOX has been an asset for NCC, Neighbours and Green Star compliance. First, let's talk about energy efficiency legislation and initiatives that you'll find in Australia. When it comes to the energy efficiency theme, these 6 codes are probably the most common that we come across in Australia and are the main motivators for requiring energy meters and energy management systems, or EMS. The most important is the National Construction Code, and there were some changes made to Section J last year, covering energy efficiency, which forcibly altered how energy management solutions are implemented. We also have Neighbours and Green Star, which are both voluntary initiatives, but you'll see later that they can be used as part of compulsory energy efficiency requirements. The Commercial Building Disclosure is a regulatory program for commercial office space across Australia. Energy Efficiency in Government Operations, or EEGO, is a policy for government agencies to achieve set energy efficiency targets. And we also have the National Greenhouse and Energy Reporting Act, or the NGER, which provides a national framework for reporting greenhouse gas, energy production and energy consumption. So let's take a better look at these codes and mechanisms. First, we have the National Construction Code, or NCC, created by the Australian Building Codes Board. The NCC provides the minimum necessary requirements for safety, health, amenity and sustainability in the design and construction of new buildings throughout Australia, as well as new building work in existing buildings. This code is enforced by local and state governments. So the NCC is comprised in 2 parts. We have the Building Code of Australia, or BCA, and the Plumbing Code of Australia. The Building Code is in 2 volumes. Volume 1 applies to multi-residential, commercial, industrial and public buildings, whereas Volume 2 is for low-rise, residential and non-habitable buildings. Within Volume 1 is Section J, which covers energy efficiency. The main objective of Section J is to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions of a building by reducing the amount of energy it requires for its normal operation. Section J 8.3 is specifically relevant to energy management and monitoring, which we'll now take a look at. All multi-residential, commercial, industrial and public buildings must have the facility to record consumption of gas and electricity through meters. For those buildings with a total floor area greater than 2,500 metres squared and common area greater than 500 metres squared, must also have separate meters, monitoring the energy consumption of light, power, mechanical services, hot water, lifts and escalators, and other ancillary plant. Now Part C is the new addition to Section J 8.3 that came into effect from May 2020. In addition to requiring meters to measure the key loads of a building, installations now require a single user interface that collects and stores the data from energy meters so that it can be easily accessed and reviewed. This is significant as previously all the data that is captured didn't need to be seen or analysed. However, this new amendment will allow stakeholders to easily identify future opportunities for further energy efficiency. It also gives purpose to the previous requirements of requiring a meter for collecting energy data, rather than just collecting it for the sake of ticking a box. So what does this mean for new installations? Well, energy meters must be comms enabled. Common protocols include Modbus and BACnet. All meters installed on site must connect to a single user interface for data collection. that energy data must be time and date stamped, and the information should be easily identifiable, i.e. labelled according to the circuit that it's monitoring, such as lighting or HVAC or power. The EMS interface must also be able to store the data for a reasonable period, although minimum storage time is not specified. We'll cover off how this looks in practice in a short while, once we cover off the other energy efficiency codes. Next we have NABERS, the National Australian Built Environment Rating System. Now this is a national system that measures the environmental performance of buildings, tenancies and homes. Like the efficiency star ratings that you would get on your fridge or washing machine, NABERS provides a rating from 1 to 6 stars for buildings efficiency across energy, water, waste and indoor environment. This rating is also only valid for 12 months at a time to ensure that the rating represents current performance. Now NABERS itself is a voluntary rating tool, except when it's used for the purpose of compliance with the Commercial Building Disclosure Program, which we'll cover shortly. Now because of this, 78% of Australia's office space is currently rated with NABERS Energy, and the majority of state governments also require government leased and owned office buildings and tenancies to have a minimum 4.5 star NABERS Energy rating. So how do I get a NABERS rating? Well, it has to be done through accredited assessors. Now, the rating is based on 12 months operational data, and that's relevant to the specific building efficiency being assessed. For example, energy consumption, water consumption, etc. The more efficient, the higher the rating. If you are in the design stage, you actually are required to engage a NABERS certified independent design reviewer to undertake an energy efficiency review of your project. Now you can find accredited assessors for your area from the NABERS website. So what benefit does the NABERS rating provide? Well, in some cases it is compulsory to have a NABERS rating, but apart from that, it helps building owners to understand their building's performance versus other similar buildings, providing a benchmark for progress. Also, having a building that has a lower environmental impact, lower running costs, and being able to communicate that simply and with confidence gives building owners a competitive advantage with prospective buyers, renters, procurement teams, or even hotel guests. There are also various incentive schemes available that use NABERS as well, so providing financial incentives for households and businesses to be more energy efficient. You can access funding for energy efficiency upgrades in your buildings by using your NABERS rating to verify your savings. So the Energy Savings Scheme in New South Wales is one of these incentive schemes, and in Victoria there is the Victorian Energy Upgrades. Now on to Green Star. So Green Star is an internationally recognised national voluntary environmental rating system that evaluates the environmental design and construction of building and communities. Green Star can also use data from NABERS energy, water and indoor environment ratings where it's available. So Green Star ratings are pretty popular, despite them only being voluntary, and 44% of CBD office space is Green Star certified, and at least 40% of retail space as well has some sort of Green Star rating. So the Green Building Council of Australia, who look after Green Star, have done some studies and they've found that Green Star certified buildings produce 56% fewer greenhouse gas emissions than average Australian buildings. They use 66% less electricity than the average Australian building. And they also use 50% less electricity than if they had been built to meet the minimum industry requirements, such as those that are listed in the NCC. Motivation for getting Green Star is similar to NABERS. It just provides building owners with a competitive edge and helps future-proof investments. The Commercial Building Disclosure, or CBD Scheme, is a national program that aims to improve the energy efficiency of large office buildings in Australia. It is managed by the Australian Government Department of Industry, Science, Energy and Resources. The CBD scheme requires most sellers or leases of any office space of 1,000 square metres and above to obtain and disclose a valid Building Energy Efficiency Certificate, or BEEC. BEECs are valid for up to 12 months, and they include the building's NABERS energy rating, a tenancy lighting assessment of the relevant area of the building, and general energy efficiency guidance. So the Commercial Building Disclosure Scheme is probably the main reason why we see NABERS certification requirements in Australia. Energy efficiency in government operations, or the EEGO, applies to all Australian government departments and substantially budget-funded agencies. The federal government has set a minimum energy performance standard for its buildings and utilises NABERS ratings to set these targets. So across Australia, the minimum requirements are 4.5 stars NABERS Energy for whole building, or just NABERS Energy, and NABERS Energy based building where applicable. So those different ratings depend on whether whole or part of the building is occupied. There is also a green lease schedule, or GLS, which is required for leased buildings. And as part of that, it includes the 4.5 stars NABERS Energy for base building. In many states, including New South Wales, Victoria, the Northern Territory, South Australia and Western Australia, there is actually a minimum of 5-star NABERS Energy ratings that are required for government-owned and leased offices that came in the last 12 to 18 months. Finally, we have the National Greenhouse and Energy Reporting Scheme, or NGER, which was introduced in 2007 to provide data and accounting in relation to greenhouse gas emissions and energy consumption and production. The scheme's legislated objectives are to underpin the carbon price mechanism, inform policy making and the Australian public, and to meet Australia's international reporting obligations, and provide a single national reporting framework for energy and emissions reporting. So this scheme essentially applies to companies that were impacted by the carbon tax, and these companies are required to self-report their CO2 emissions each year or face maximum civil penalties of $220,000 and daily penalty provisions for any continuing offences. So compliance to this scheme itself is purely based on CO2 emissions, but to reduce these CO2 emissions, you of course need to look at energy efficiency. It's one of the main components of that. So this particular framework is usually used in conjunction with one of the other schemes, such as NABERS, EEGO, etc. So here's a summary table of the energy efficiency codes that you'll most commonly see in Australia. So in terms of what's mandatory for the majority of companies, you have the NCC and the Commercial Building Disclosure, which in turn makes NABERS also compulsory in those cases. For government buildings, you'll most likely come across the EEGO or NGERS, and as part of those, they'll utilise the NABERS ratings as well. Finally, there's Green Star, which is voluntary, but it does really make a difference in terms of attracting customers for your building, as it is world leading. So now that we've talked about the most common initiatives and codes relating to energy efficiency, let's talk about what NHP can do to help you comply, with a focus on our new product, the Smart eBOX. If you can recall the requirements of the NCC, energy meters with a communication interface are required to measure power consumption of lights, power, mechanical services, etc. NHP offer a range of energy meters with onboard comms, from single phase to 3-phase meters, quick connect and branch monitoring solutions, as well as multifunction meters and power analyzers. We also have a pulse acquisition module available to record data from water and gas meters. All of our metering products are compatible with the Smart eBOX platform. So what is the Smart eBOX? Well, to help make NCC compliance straightforward for you, NHP have designed an all-in-one enclosed EMS solution. It's a data logger, controller, gateway and web server with 4 GB of onboard storage. You can connect 64 plus devices to the eBOX over Modbus Serial or Ethernet, and that's not exclusive to just energy meters. You can feed data from any Modbus device and view it on the eBOX's web server. We know that power distribution is becoming smarter every day, and you can access load data from transfer switches, circuit breakers, even power quality units through the Smart eBOX via Ethernet or remotely through 4G access. If you have another BMS or EMS on site, the Smart eBOX can serve as a Modbus to BACnet gateway, feeding data into these platforms. Let's talk a bit more about the product features. So, you're guaranteed compliance to NCC Section J at point 3 with the eBOX. You also have a fully customizable web-based user interface, so you can view, analyze data that is most important to you on any browser, smartphone or tablet. You can stay aware of your energy consumption with scheduled reports and email alerts. And it's also compatible with a wide range of energy meters and power distribution products. So as I said before, you can connect 64 or more devices or 5,000 data points to any single Smart eBOX. The eBOX can pull data from any Modbus capable device, so that includes our panel boards, switchboards, transfer switches and power quality, just to name a few. You can also push live data to cloud platforms such as Carlo Gavazzi EM2, Microsoft Azure, or Amazon Web Services, as well as any other BMS or SCADA via Modbus or BACnet. You also get the benefit of no paid software required, and there's no ongoing subscription fee either. It's also really easy to install. You just need to mount and wire up required power and network cables, just like our panel boards. It's also built and commissioned by NHP, so you don't need to worry about any setup of the EMS platform. NHP does that for you as part of our service package. So what applications are best suited for the NHP Smart eBOX? Well, we've seen it successfully installed in warehouses, schools, industrial manufacturing, and small to medium commercial buildings. And now let's look at some example applications where customers have utilised the NHP Smart eBOX to great effect, both in warehousing and as a retrofit into a small commercial building. We'll also cover off the different energy efficiency codes considered in these cases, and how NHP provided the right solution to suit our customer's application. So first case study we'll look at is a logistics warehouse. That was part of a new logistics park in New South Wales. Now the park itself is massive. There is, I think, 850,000 square metres worth of warehousing and 2 intermodal transport terminals on site. So these transport terminals means that there's up to 3,000 less container trucks on Sydney roads daily, which that's better for everyone. This, along with some other energy efficiency features of the site, including 50 megawatt hours per annum of renewable energy through rooftop solar and other means, rainwater harvesting and energy efficiency lighting, it's calculated to reduce CO2 emissions by 110,000 tonnes per annum. So the original application was for 2 buildings in total, each with 2 to 3 tenants within. And you'll see shortly they needed an EMS to satisfy both the NCC and Green Star requirements. So as part of NCC Section J, they were required to centralise energy usage of light, power, mechanical services such as air conditioning or heating on site, and lifts. The building owners were also going for a 5-star Green Star rating, which therefore has requirements similar to the NCC, needing to collect data from meters into one place, which made the requirement for an EMS, and in this case a smart eBOX, for this installation. So let's look at the actual solution that NHP provided. So the panel boards installed on site were manufactured by NHP. There was around 10 to 12 concept plus dual metering panel boards used per warehouse, so across 2 warehouses, each monitoring light and power separately as per the requirements of the NCC. So I've got an image there of the insides of one of those concept dual metering boards. You can see the meter down the bottom with the 2 separate CTs monitoring light and power. There are also 3 multifunction meters installed in the main switchboard that were monitoring overall consumption and mechanical services. And finally, there are also 2 water meters per tenancy for potable and non-potable water. The water consumption data from these meters was also fed into the smart eBOX to satisfy both the NCC and Green Star requirements. So once the smart eBOX and panel boards were manufactured and sent to site, the contractor installed them, wired them up, and then NHP came onto site to check that the meters were set up correctly and with Modbus addressing and the like, to make sure that all the data was being pulled correctly into the smart eBOX. So for this particular site, there was a cloud-based EMS used to centralise data from all warehouses. So NHP's application engineers were there to make sure that that data from the smart eBOXes was in the right format for this platform before handing over. So in terms of overall experience, feedback from the customer was that they had a great experience with the all-in-one solution NHP could provide, both with our concept metering panel boards and the smart eBOX, as well as our service package as part of that. That they loved it so much that they actually recommended it for a 3rd warehouse in the complex that was looked after by another contractor. So great experience all around. Next up, we'll look at another application, which was an older commercial building based in Sydney. Now this building had 11 floor spaces and currently 2 tenants occupying the space with a number of empty floors. The current tenants were all metered through the one retail. Now the owner and landlord of the building wanted to offer or increase their offer of tenancy space in the building prior to the planned demolition of the building in several years' time. Now the current configuration of the main switchboard did not meet requirements for billing multiple tenants separately, and it also didn't have the room to accommodate these additional meters that would be required. To avoid a costly upgrade, it was proposed that the existing main switchboard configuration and tenant submains were kept, and there was a need to reconfigure the downstream meter infrastructure as a temporary provision until the building is demolished. Thus, we had a need to establish an energy management system, or EMS, comprising of a private NMI patent-approved meter per floor, so levels 1 through to 11, consolidating the various distribution boards into one supply from the new meter per floor. Now, the EMS was required to provide regular individual tenancy floor power usage calculations to issue to the tenants, and also total tenancy usage to calculate the separate house services power usage. So let's take a look at the energy efficiency codes considered for this application. As this is an office building, it needs to comply with the commercial building disclosure before it can advertise to new tenants, and therefore it's required to get a neighbour's energy rating. And since the meters will be used for billing, they must be NMI approved meters. I didn't cover off on NMI previously because it isn't specifically to do with energy efficiency, But basically any utility grade meter needs to be tested and approved by a verifier before installation. So this extra check ensures that the meter remains accurate for their lifetime and they aren't easily tampered with. So these standards and tests are set out by the National Measurement Institute, which is the governing body that develops and maintains the Australian measurement standards. So NHP have an NMI patent approved meter, the EM24 shown here, and it was used for this project for all the metering requirements. So let's take a look at the hardware used. So NHP built and supplied the smart eBOX and also supplied one EM24 sub-billing meter and one 80 amp DIN-T 10H breaker per floor, so that was across 11 floors. So those were then all housed within load centres that were built and installed by the contractor. So once everything was installed and wired up ready to go, NHP went out to site, again like before, just checking the meters are set up correctly, Modbus addressing and the like. Once that was set up, there was a remote commissioning component, setting up dashboards for the customer based on their request. So our application engineers put that together and also ran through some training with the customer on how to use the platform, set up custom dashboards of their own, as well as email reporting and the like. So the customer feedback from them, they found it extremely easy to use. They really liked the custom dashboards that the eBOX could provide. They could see exactly what they wanted to and didn't have to filter through unnecessary data. The benefit of the remote access of the smart eBOX meant that the landlord also didn't need to be present on site to read the recordings from the meters. So in summary, hopefully by now the various codes we have in Australia for energy efficiency and how they are implemented are clearer to you. If you would like more information regarding these, please check out our technical news issue number 76. It can be found on our website. Probably the most important takeaway to consider is the changes to Section J in the National Construction Code. And to make compliance easy for you, NHP now have the Smart eBOX, an enclosed EMS solution that we have set up and configured to your requirements. For more information, you can find our Smart eBOX brochure on our website, and feel free to contact your local NHP representative.